How do you see society treat men and women differently?
I think men generally tend to put a little less pressure on themselves. I think it comes from a position of privilege in their families where they all are ladla betas, and therefore there is just a little less expectation of them. When I compare and contrast that with a woman in today's society where there's a lot more pressure to both have achieve your professional goals as well as live up to the expectations in a modern family. I think that's the best part, the less pressure. But again, I say that with a sense of responsibility because I think men also need to balance that privilege and understand that that while that's a privilege, they need to have greater responsibilities to their families and to understand where a woman comes from also. The worst part is this part about understanding. I think men often are not taught about emotional intelligence, are not taught about the value of emotions, are not taught about learning about your own emotions and how to deal with them, communicate them, and therefore often struggle in this part. And any leader who's doing well is someone that who's able to emotionally back their supporters or their team. So I think any successful leader is someone who also has a high EQ as well as IQ. And I think men, for various reasons in our culture, are not taught about emotions enough.
What would you look as more important, physical health or mental health?
I think both are equally important because if physical health tells you about muscles and about joints, then mental health tells you about your brain and about anxieties and stresses. No amount of doing squats or working with dumbbells will ever teach you about how to manage with stress or cope with anxiety or where those periods of doubt and insecurity, how do you manage that? And I think while there is a structured atmosphere in our gyms, in our schools, to talk about physical goals, whether to run faster, jump higher, we don't know enough about how to deal with our mental health and issues that come with mental health.
What do you think are the phrases that men have heard which has changed into a toxic masculinity?
Well, often these boys will be boys, ladke to ladke hi rahenge. I think that is an extremely negative signal because we are essentially giving a pass to young boys for bad behavior, and we are unable to give them an alternative model, an alternative positive role model. Because often these boys will be boys. These are phrases that when we hear about boys indulging in harassing women, eve teasing, or being abusive or being physically violent. And I think that's not how humans need to be. Humans need to process their emotions and their own hormones. And therefore I think this we have to get out of this language because this language only perpetuates a negative habit or a negative routine.
So what would you say are some phrases that you have heard or not heard that has shaped you as a man?
Well, I think just emotional intelligence is a very important phrase. What I also hear about is how to understand what you're feeling and talk about your feelings. I think that phrase about talking about your feelings, I think we don't understand the value of it, and sometimes we just lash out and we end up in a very dark place, either relying on alcohol or some negative substance for support because we just don't know how to express our feelings. And when these feelings are bottled up, they just build up and build up and build up till they reach a tipping point where a volcano erupts, and therefore where we end up doing harm to ourselves, we end up harming others in our society. And therefore I think this is a very important issue that we are talking about today.
Why do you think men don't share their mental struggles?
Because they're not taught how to. Moms are very busy, dads are only interested in playing, and therefore, boys are often in their peer groups in which their subject of discussion is about some sport or something in the schools. This is not a subject that is taught in schools, you would have a class around physical education, you would have a class around value education, but there's no class about mental education. We have in school, we don't learn about anxiety, stress, depression, doubt, insecurity, mental toughness. So, therefore, men especially grow up in a vacuum without having anybody in their lives to talk to or learn about this subject.
What do you think is the biggest taboo that men face around mental issues?
I think men don't know how to be vulnerable because vulnerability is looked upon as a sign of weakness. I think men are taught that it is to be strong is to be silent, to be strong is to be able to bottle up those emotions. And as a result, you're only perpetuating a weakness or you're perpetuating a pressure which is silently building up inside your body. I think what we instead need to teach men is that it's okay to be vulnerable, it's okay to be feel doubt, and that's where your real strength is tested, when you're able to overcome your own self-doubt, when you're able to overcome those insecurities. Otherwise, if you are facing a life without doubts and insecurities, I think you're just trying to escape that instead of trying to face it. And I think that's what we need to teach men, that to be vulnerable and to face that vulnerability head on.
How do you think educational establishments can help change this narrative?
So, what you have in schools is a counselor, and you're told that when you're experiencing distress, that's when you go to the counselor. But your PE teacher and your PE classes are weekly. You have PE classes once every week. So, it's just normal to build good habits around your physical health. But that structure, that routine of regularly going to a mental health class, course, workshop, so that you're able to understand its various aspects, I think that is missing. And therefore, when you're going out to seek help at the time of distress, because mental health is still taboo, sometimes we don't even avail of that support. We don't even avail of that resource, of that counselor. So I think it's much more important that we have this routine of regularly having mental health classes, courses, workshops, seminars, and coaches, so that it becomes, as I said, like you go through a regular gym, you should go to a regular mental health, fitness or health seminar.
How do you think that family can help change this narrative around mental health and make it more accessible?
Well, I think parents need to educate themselves on this topic. Thankfully, in an era of digital platforms, there are certain online resources, but we must actively seek out those resources. And the first time parents, and especially new parents, they learn take a lot of lessons on parenting, either from school teachers who they feel that know a lot about nurturing a child, and also from the doctors in the clinics where they take the children for regular, injections and vaccinations. I think in both these places, at the clinic as well as in the school, both doctors and nurses as well as teachers must be able to guide parents on where they can find these online resources which help them to talk to the children about these important topics. And it's very necessary that along with teaching values to your child, or teaching about your culture, teaching your native tongue, teaching your favorite sport, it's also very important for parents to be positive role models, and B, also talk about the value of understanding your feelings and being able to express your feelings.
Knowing what you know about mental health, how would you redefine the idea of strength?
I think strength is, you have to be tested for your strength to become, for your strength to really showcase itself. Because if you're not tested, then you're not challenged. So you have to be challenged. And if you have to be challenged, you have to understand that you have to face anxiety. You can't run away from anxiety, and you can't run away from insecurity. You can't run away from doubt. So you have to be in that phase and be normal also. Feel that it's okay to experience that. one should not try to, run away from those emotions, try to escape from it, try to, get into bad habits like drinking or some kind of substance abuse. So I think it's very important to normalize stress, anxiety, insecurity, these phases. There would be highs and lows in life, there would be ups and downs in life. And at these times when you're facing this conflict, this test, I think it's very necessary to kind of create that support system, especially in your homes and amongst your peer group. I think it's very necessary for us, if we see someone struggling, then we should make ourselves available. At the same time, when we ourselves feel that we are struggling, we should be able to raise a hand and say that I'm struggling and I need help.
How would you know, let the men know that they are not alone in the struggle?
As I said, we are all in this together. I, as a public representative, feel that this is a very important issue. This is an issue that needs to be debated everywhere, right from our homes to television channels to the corridors of Parliament. We need policies. We need to bring this debate into our debate around health, our debate about school curriculums. And I think the more we debate it, the more we talk about it, the less of a taboo it becomes. I think the first stage of it is to break the taboo about mental health.